我今日要解釋一個係爭論性嘅一個題目。
Today I want to explain to you a controversial topic.
睇而家情況裏邊見到咧，呢個題目咧可以分兩個家庭，一係朋友，一教會或者整個社會。
From my observation, that this issue can cause a family or friends or church or even a society to split.
響去年8月28號，有一位離開我哋搬嚟我哋滿地可嘅一個會員。
Last year in August 28th, a member who had moved away from Montreal.
佢問我一個問題。
This person asked me a question.
呢個問題亦都係咧好多其他人咧都有咁嘅想法。
And it is a topic where many people have a similar thought.
佢話：你對呢一個疫苗有咩嘅睇法咧
？And says, what are your thoughts on this vaccine?
佢話：假如呢個引用呢一個獸嘅印記。你估我如果接受呢個疫苗嘅時候，對我嘅信心有冇任何嘅矛盾呢？
And concerning the mark of the in relation to the mark of the beast, do you think that that it would cause a conflict with my faith?
當然佢係唔想接受呢個疫苗，因為佢覺得呢個係獸嘅印記。
And of course, in his heart, he did not want to accept this vaccine because he thought this would be the mark of the beast.
我同佢交談咗好耐。
And we conversed for a long time.
咁解釋咗俾佢聽。
I explained to the person.
感謝神，我哋咧冇任何嘅爭議，佢同意我嘅解釋。
Thanks God that he did not dispute my explanation.
原來我哋響啲唔肯接受疫苗當中咧，係一部分咧係基督徒。
The fact is that among those who are against the vaccine, there's a group of Christians.
佢哋打死都唔會去接受呢個疫苗啊，因為佢覺得咧呢一個係個獸嘅印記。
That there's no way that they would accept this vaccine because they thought that they believe that this is the mark of the beast.
感謝主喺我哋教會裏邊咧冇呢個咁嘅問題，因為咧我哋
But I thank God that we don't have such a problem in our church.
但係咧，響基督徒當中咧係有呢個爭議喺裏邊。
But there is this discussion or debate among the Christians.
所以為咗要了解呢個問題同埋點樣喺聖經裏邊揾答案咧，我哋今日嚟到睇睇呢個問題。
So we need to understand this issue as well as to find the answer in the Bible.
就係疫苗同埋獸嘅印記嘅解密。
We want to demystify the vaccine against the mark of the beast.
因為有一小部分嘅基督徒同埋教會認為呢個接受疫苗嘅時候就接受咗敵基督就係獸嗰個印記。
Because a very small group of Christians or churches believe that to accept this vaccine is to accept the mark of the Antichrist.
而且當政府封城啊，或者限聚或者係頒發呢個二維碼呢個疫苗護照嘅時候咧，係更加對佢嚟講係證明咗呢一個咁嘅想法。
Especially when the government have order a lockdown and a gathering limit as well as to give the vaccine passport, it let them believe that or it proved that this was about their thought.
佢哋覺得呢啲咁嘅一切嘅措施係證明咗咧，而家就係極敵基督同埋獸嘅印記嘅末世嘅時代啦。
And they believe because all these measures is to prove that this is that we are living in the end times of the Antichrist and the mark of the beast.
要明白佢哋點解咁嘅思想嘅時候，我哋要讀一讀佢哋引用嘅經文係乜嘢嘢，然後我哋去了解明白一下。
And to understand how come they would have this the way of they think, we need to understand the scripture that they referenced.
為咗唔去斷章取義嘅話咧，我係需要咧讀咗全章嘅經文。
And for the sake of not interpreting our context, I will need to read the whole passage.
啟示第13章第1節。 我又看見一個獸從海中上嚟，有十角七頭，在十角上帶有10個冠冕，七頭上有褻瀆的名號。我所看見的獸，形象像豹，腳像熊的腳，口像獅子的口。那龍將自己能力、座位和大權柄都給了他。我看見獸的7個頭，有一個似乎受了死傷，那死傷卻醫好了。全地的人都希奇跟從那獸，又拜那龍，因為他將自己嘅權柄給了獸。又拜獸說：誰能比這獸？誰能與他交戰呢？又賜給他誇大褻瀆話的口，又有權柄賜給他，可以任意而行42個月。
Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like this beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months.
第11節有冇？有啊！我又看見另一個獸從地中上嚟，有2個角如同羊羔，說話好像龍。他在頭一個獸面前施行頭一個獸所有的權柄，並且叫地和住在地上的人拜那死傷醫好的頭一個獸。又行大奇事，甚至在人面前叫火從天降在地上。他因賜給他的權柄，在獸面前能行奇事，就迷惑住在地上的人，說要給那獸都傷還活着的獸作個像，有權柄賜給他，叫獸像有生氣，並且能說話，又叫所有不拜獸像的都被殺害。他又叫眾人，無論大小貧窮、自主的、為奴的，都在右手上或是在額頭上受了一個印記。除了那受印記，有了獸名數目的，都不能作買賣。在這裏有智慧，凡有聰明的，可以計算獸的數目，因為這是人的數目，他的數目就是666。
Verse 11. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound has been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it had given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak, and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. This call for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is number of a man. That number is 666.
神，我哋感謝你俾我哋有你嘅話語。
Father, we thank you that you have given us your word.
懇求你將你嘅話語嘅奧秘俾我哋顯明。
And may you reveal to us the mystery of your word.
因為你話到，當我哋讀呢本書嘅時候，我哋就會得到智慧。
Because you told us that when we read this book, that we will receive wisdom.
能夠真係應付呢個末世裏邊要成就嘅事情。
To be able to handle the events of this end times.
懇求主你嘅聖靈啟示呢個約翰呢個啟示嘅聖靈嚟到，同樣向我哋 嚟到去解明呢一個咁嘅奧秘。
And may the Spirit that revealed the mystery to John be at the same will reveal to us as well.
我哋咁樣禱告奉主耶穌嘅聖名求。
We pray all this in Jesus' name, Amen.
神喺呢個啟示裏邊講俾你知道一樣嘢，就係咧呢個敵基督設立嘅獸嘅印記之前咧，有好多事係需要係發生過嚟。
In Revelation, that God have told us that before the establishing the Antichrist established the mark of the beast, many events must have happened before.
然後呢個獸嘅印記先至開始嘅。
Before the mark of the time of the mark of the beast begin.
所以我哋要明白到有乜嘢係發生先有呢個獸嘅印記開始。
So we need to understand what must transpire before the beginning of the mark of the beast. 其
實咧喺啟示第4章開始嘅時候咧，所講到就係末世嘅末期嘅時候，呢個世代末期嘅時候咧，有7年嘅大災難。
That in Revelation chapter 4, that at the beginning of this end times, there will be 7 years of tribulation.
係創世以前係冇過，而將嚟都係冇嘅。
And it's something that haven't happened since the beginning of the creation, and will not happen again.
點解有咁嘅大災難呢？
And why do we have this time of tribulation?
以賽亞書第13章第9節裏邊解釋到咧，就係因為神因為世界上嘅罪惡惡貫滿盈啦，所以咧就要刑罰呢個世界。
That in book of Isaiah chapter 13, from verse 9 to 12, it said that the evil of the world had reached a point where God need to punish them.
其他有好多經文都係解釋到咁樣嘅嘢嘅。
And many other scriptures mention about the same thing.
然後咧就開始7年嘅大災難。
So it begins the 7 years of tribulation. 有
唔同嘅天災橫禍、饑荒嘅瘟疫會發生喺呢個啟示錄第6章第8節裏邊。我入觀看，見有一匹黑馬，一匹灰馬，騎在馬上個名字叫做死，陰府也隨着他，有權柄賜給他們，可以用刀劍、饑荒、瘟疫、野獸殺害地上1/4之人。
In the 7 years, beginning of the 7 year tribulation, there will be a lot of natural disasters, famines, and also plague, as recorded in Revelation chapter 6, verse 8. It says that I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over the fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth.
喺第8章第8節裏邊亦都講到一個火嘅山係丟咗海裏邊使到咧水咧係變成為血嘅。
And also recorded in Revelation chapter 8, it mentioned that will be a mountain that's ablaze that will be thrown into the sea and cause the sea water turn to blood.
第8章第10節講到咧一個燒着嘅火星咧撞入地球啊！唔係火星呢個火星，係燒着火嘅星嘅流星，應該係咧係使到水咧變為苦嘅。
And also recorded in Revelation chapter 8 verse 10, it said that a star will be crashing onto the earth, a blazing star will crash into the earth and cause the water to turn bitter.
然後第9章第1節裏邊講到咧，就係呢個無底坑咧係會打開，然後咧有啲蝗蟲啊，當然唔係地上嗰啲蝗蟲，係無底坑嘅蝗蟲咧出嚟傷害地上嗰個人。
And also in chapter 9 in Revelations, it talks that the abyss will be opened up, and there's locusts, well, not the real locusts, but something similar to locusts will come out and to earth.
第11章講到咧，有2個見證人喺神嘅裏邊咧，係差派嚟呢個世界上高咧，係去傳道。
And in chapter 11 in Revelations, it mentioned there will be 2 witnesses who will prophesy during that time.
係大約3年幾嘅時間。
And they will do that for 3+ years.
然後咧，佢哋行好多神蹟奇事咧，叫天唔落雨，同埋用好多不同嘅災殃咧，係水變成為血啊，同埋好多不同嘅災殃咧，係攻擊呢個世界嘅。
And they have the power to shut the heavens so that there will be no rain. And also they were able to turn water into blood, as well as to strike the earth with different plagues.
有3年多咁耐。
For 3+ years.
然後咧，跟住咧，佢哋第11章第7節度講到咧，佢哋咧會俾香咧頭先剛才所讀嘅無底坑上嚟嘅獸咧，係被佢哋殺嘅。
And in the same chapter, in verse 7, it mentioned that they will be killed by the beast who rose from the abyss.
然後跟住就第12章就講到咧，有一個大嘅紅龍7頭10角咧，響天上高出現。
And in the chapter 12 in Revelation, it mentioned there will be a great red dragon that appears, that has 7 heads and 10 horns, will appear in heaven. 係
其實咧，佢同呢個米迦列咧係天使長咧係作戰咧，但係咧就係輸咗俾佢咧踢咗出嚟呢個天嘅。
And he battled with the archangel Michael, and he was thrown out of heaven.
咁呢個大紅龍咧，其實咧就係響你第12章第9節同埋第10節咧講到佢係古蛇，係撒旦喺天上都被逐出江門嘅。
That in chapter 12, again, it mentioned that this red dragon is actually the ancient serpent, that is Satan, he was thrown out of heaven.
第12章第12節裏邊講到，因為佢知道嘅時候唔多嘅時候咧，佢就即係作垂死嘅爭戰喺地上高咧，係打呢場仗嘅。
And also the same chapter 12, in verse 12, it said that Satan knew his time was short, so he came down onto earth for his last-ditch struggle.
不過首先咧，佢將佢能力係俾一個敵基督，其實就係。
But he first gave his power to the Antichrist.
所以咧喺7年嘅裏邊咧，敵基督咧係會橫行呢個地上高嘅。
So for 7 years, this Antichrist run rampant on earth.
其實就今日所讀嘅經文裏邊所讀到第13章第1節開始咧，講到一個獸咧響呢個海上高上嚟有7頭10角。
So this is the beast that we read this morning, that he rose out from the sea, have 10 horns and 7 heads. 呢個獸好特別，個形象好似個豹，個腳好似個熊，個口好似獅子，個龍咧將能力交俾佢。That the image of this beast is very special. He resembles a leopard and has feet of a bear, but a mouth like a lion. And the dragon gave his authority to him, this beast. 幾年之前咧，我同大家講到咧但以理書第7章嘅時候，同大家解釋到咧，其實呢個係其實係同呢一個第7章但以理書咧係有個對照嘅4個獸。And several years ago, I explained to you about Daniel chapter 7, and this beast we talk about is very similar to what was talked about in Daniel chapter 7. 咁我唔讀嗰度啦，但係咧嗰陣時我解釋到大家知道咧係其實咧係第7章16節裏邊咧呢個但以理就問呢個侍立周圍嘅一個使者咧，就問佢呢個真情係。咁啊，然後個使者講話呢個4個大獸就係4個王啊，或者應該係王國咧，係喺世上都要興起嘅。第17節。And in Daniel chapter 10, verse 16 to 17, Daniel asked one who was standing there, and what does all this mean? And the person explained to him that these 4 great beasts represent 4 kings or 4 kingdoms that will rise from the earth. 喺歷史俾我哋知道咧，呢4個帝國就係巴比倫。就係獅子啦，呢個獅子嘅口，然後呢個馬代波斯就係熊，然後呢個希臘就係個豹，同埋羅馬就係呢個頭有10個角嘅頭。And from history, we understand this 4 kingdom refers to first Babylon, the lion, which is represent Iraq, and the Media Persia, which is the bear, and Greek, which is the leopard, and the Roman Empire, which is the beasts that have 10 horns. 所以呢個敵基督嘅國咧，係包括咗呢個巴比倫、馬代波斯、希臘同埋羅馬帝國所有嘅領土共同有嘅地方。So the empire of the Antichrist would encompass the regions of Babylon and Media Persia, Greek, and also the Roman Empire.
但係我需要知道咧，呢四個嘅帝國咧係有唔同嘅版圖嘅。
And we need to know that for these four kingdoms, they have their own the different boundaries.
但係呢個敵基督嘅國咧，就應當呢個四個版圖真係點講啊？疊埋一齊嗰個地方，就唔係就係嗰啲響一個版圖，但係唔響其他三個版圖裏邊嗰啲咁嘅國家就唔算數嘅。
So the empire or the kingdom of the Antichrist should encompass or should include all the regions belonging to these four empires.
大家需要記住我而家所講呢番説話，因為好重要。一陣講到呢個咁嘅敵基督嘅領土嘅時候。
And we should remember this because it's very important when we explain about the boundary of the kingdom of Antichrist.
所以但以理第7章裏邊咧，特別指到第4個獸係頭上嘅10個角。
In the book of Daniel, in verse 7, it mentioned that the last beast has 10 horns.
第20節裏邊講，頭上有10個角和説和那另一個角掌一個角，就係這個角前有3個角被打落，有眼，有這角有眼，有説誇大個口，形狀強橫，過於其他嘅同類。
And in Daniel chapter 7 verse 20 it said, I also want to know about the 10 horns and its head and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell, the horn that looked more imposing than the others, and that had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
第24節裏面講咧，佢話咧，至於那10個角，就是從這個角中必興起10個王，後來又興起一個王，與先前的不同，他必制服3王。
That in the verse 24, the 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings.
所以呢個敵基督嘅國咧，係響咁多嘅4個不同嘅馬代波斯巴比倫同埋希律同埋羅馬咧4個不同嘅國度當中，其中有10個國家。
So it mentioned there that within the regions of these 4 empires, that the Babylonian, the Babylon, the Greek, the Roman, and also Media Persia, there will be 10 kingdoms that arise from these the borders of these 4 kingdoms.
但係點解會有7個頭唔係10個頭咧？就係因為咧呢個敵基督咧會打低咗3個皇帝嘅，所以咧就係7個頭10個角係咁嘅意思嘅。
And why there's only 7 heads and 10 horns? Because the Antichrist would defeat 3 of them, so leave them only having 7 heads instead of 10.
因為第25節裏邊所講到咧，就話咧佢咧係要折磨至高者嘅聖民咧，係想改變節期、律法同埋聖民，必交付他手1載、2載、3載，1載、2載、半載，即係3年半啦。
In verse 25, he will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set time and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hand for a time, times, and half a time, which means 3.5 years.
所以啟示錄第13章今日所讀嘅經文咧，所講呢個最後嘅時代嘅呢個國王國興起咧，其實就係同呢個但以理書講第7章裏邊呢一個最後嘅王國係同一個王國嚟嘅。
And when in the scripture we read in Revelation chapter 13, they talk about the end times, a kingdom will rise with 710 horns, is the same one that spoke about in the book of Daniel chapter 7.
啟示第13章第4節裏面講咧，呢個大紅龍就係撒旦咧，因為知道時間無多咧，所以佢將佢個權柄係交俾呢個敵基督，興起佢做皇帝嘅。
And that in the Revelation chapter 13, verse 4, that Satan, the red dragon, knew that his time was short, so he gave his authority to the Antichrist to be the king.
然後跟住仲有另外一樣嘢發生，先至講到呢個獸嘅印記點樣嘅來源嘅。
And another thing must happen before the beginning of the mark of the beast.
就係第11節裏面所講嘅另外一個獸咧，唔係響海中上嚟呢個獸喎，乃係地上高響地中間裏邊出現嘅一個獸。
That in verse 11 it mentioned there's a second beast not coming from the sea but coming out of the earth.
佢係出嚟咧協助呢一個海上高出嚟嘅獸。
That he came to assist the beast who came out from the sea. 從地上高出嚟咧，其實佢意會到係響陰間呢個地下嘅勢力嘅，就係咧係一個邪靈嚟嘅，有個。That he rose from the earth. It implied that he carried with him the power of hell. Is really actually a evil spirit? 佢咧係做呢個敵基督嘅助手。That he is the helper for this Antichrist. 佢喺世人嘅面前咧行好多神蹟咧，去迷惑啲人咧去拜敵基督嘅。That he performed many miracles to deceive the people of the earth. 喺啟示錄第16章第13節裏邊形容佢係假先知。That in the Revelation chapter 16, it described him as a false prophet. 所以我哋見到咧有三個怪獸啦，一個都係七頭十角嘅，係講同樣嘅嘢。And so we need to differentiate between the three beasts. 即係同樣呢個敵基督嘅角出現，就係第一個咧。第一個就大紅龍，就係魔鬼撒旦出現喺天。And first is the great red dragon, Satan, who will appear in the sky. 係七頭十角。Have 7 heads and 10 horns. 然後海上高出嚟嘅敵基督亦都係七頭十角。And the beast, the Antichrist who rose from the sea, also have 7 heads and 10 horns. 然後地上高出嚟嘅亦都係七頭十角呢個假先知。And this false prophet who came out from the earth also has 7 heads and 10 horns. 所以佢哋三個一齊合作咧嚟到操縱呢個敵基督嘅角嘅。And together they run the empire of the Antichrist. 所以即係神學家有啲人稱佢哋為咧不潔嘅三合一。So the theologians describe them as the unholy Trinity. 所以我哋要明白到咧。點解幾時咧？到底幾時咧？敵基督咧係崛起嚟到統治呢個十國嘅。So we need to understand when will Antichrist rise up and rule these 10 nations. 頭先我哋講到咧，呢個大災難有7年嘅時間。Mentioned before that the Great Tribulation will be 7 years. 但係呢個第5節裏邊所講咧，佢話呢個敵基督咧係橫行任意行而行咧係42個月。And in the scripture we read in verse 5 that he will continue for 42 months. 響呢個頭先但以理書所讀嘅就係話一載、二載、半載，即係3年半。嗱，42個月就係3年半，其實就係。And as we read before in the scriptures that he will exercise authority for times and a half, which is 3.5 years. 咁到底呢個敵基督係幾時出現咧？響大災難7年開始嘅時候出現咧，還是3年半過咗之後先出現咧？ So the question is whether when will Antichrist appear? Is it before the 7 years or after 3.5 years of tribulation? 咁但以理第9章第27節咧，裏邊講到咧係我哋需要明白嘅就係咧係講到咧，佢話7年之後，佢17之內咧就係咧佢與許多嘅人咧係建立呢個盟約。That in book of Daniel chapter 9, it mentioned that he will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. 所以咧其實就最重要咧，其實係同以色列簽呢個和約嘅。And most importantly, during this time, that he have a covenant with the nation of Israel. 所以頭3年半咧係冇事嘅，因為佢話17之半咧，佢必定使到呢個祭祀同埋貢獻嘅止息。And the final scripture continues that he will put an end to sacrifice and offering in the middle of the 7. So in the first 3.5 years, nothing happened. 因為佢最初開始同佢哋係講和。So at the beginning, they was negotiating peace with them. 所以以色列先至肯同佢係簽和約嘅。 and for that reason that Israel was willing to sign this covenant with him.
但係一半嘅時間之後，3年半之後咧，佢咧個廬山真面目咧就係露咗出嚟咧，佢咧然後咧就係帶兵去到呢個耶路撒冷進到呢個聖城裏邊咧，闖神嘅寶座咧嚟去作王嘅。
But after 3.5 years that he would invade Jerusalem with his army and sit on the throne of God.
然後停止所有嘅祭祀。
And then he stopped all the sacrifices.
佢哋所講行可憎行毀壞嘅咧，其實就係將呢一個咁嘅祭壇咧，係將一啲唔肯敬拜佢嘅人咧，係宰於上高，然後獻祭嘅。
And when in Daniel chapter 9, it speaks about an abomination that caused desolation, meaning that Antichrist at that time will sacrifice those who will not be his collaborators, being sacrificed on the altar.
所以咧，呢個啟示錄第13章裏邊所講咧，好肯定咧係大災難開始咗3年半之後先至發生嘅。
For that reason, that what's recorded in the Revelation chapter 13 certainly will happen after 3.5 years of tribulation.
唔係敵基督唔存在，乃只不過最初時代好好嘅。
Not that in the first 3.5 years, Antichrist did not rise yet, but rather that nothing had happened in the 3.5 years.
然後到3年半之後，神咧先將呢個聖徒咧，即係呢個以色列人咧，係交付佢手裏邊，俾佢折磨嘅，俾佢殺害嘅。
And it's only after 3.5 years that God had delivered the Jews into the hand of the Antichrist to be tortured.
呢啲都係講到嗰個背景先。
All that we mentioned is just the background.
喺呢個未有呢個獸嘅印記之前，有咁嘅背景會發生。
And before the mark of the beast being realized, this is the background. 然後我哋解釋到呢個獸印記點樣嘅來龍去脈啦。So now we explain about how this mark of the beast come about.
呢一章經文解釋到咧，原來呢個假先知咧係向呢個敵基督嚟到獻呢個祭，嚟到去為佢立一個像，叫人去敬拜佢。
That in this portion of scripture that it mentioned that the false prophet will advise the Antichrist to set up an image of himself so that and have the people to worship him.
如果啲人唔敬拜呢個敵基督嘅時候咧，係會被殺嘅。
And anyone who do not worship this image will be killed.
其中一個做法就係叫啲人咧喺呢一個敵嘅身上高、個額上高或者手腕上高咧、右手上高咧，係接受呢個敵基督嘅呢個獸嘅印記。
And one of the things that they do was to ask the people to receive a mark on their hand or on their forehead. 呢個係嚟到做分辨出咧，到底你係咪忠於效忠呢個敵基督，還是唔係服從佢嘅？ And to differentiate those who are loyal to the Antichrist and those who will not collaborate with him.
如果啲唔肯嘅時候咧，佢就唔準佢做買賣，係甚至乎係被剪除過嚟。
And those who will not accept this mark, they will not be allowed to buy and sell, and even that they will be killed.
所以呢個係獸嘅印記嘅背景。
So this is the background of the mark of the beast.
如果你明白咗呢咁嘅一切嘅過程之後咧，今日我問你嘅問題就係：到底呢個冠狀嘅疫苗係唔係獸嘅印記咧
？So after understand all that, I would ask you a question: that is this vaccine really the mark of the beast?
當你接受咗呢個冠狀嘅疫苗嘅時候，係咪等於你接受咗敵基督嘅印記、獸嘅印記咧
？And if you accepted this vaccine, are you accepting the mark of the Antichrist?
對嗰啲唔肯接受呢一個疫苗嗰啲話佢哋係呢一個疫苗係獸嘅印記嘅，佢哋話當然啦。
And for those who are against the vaccination and believe in the mark of the beast, for them this is obvious.
尤其是當佢哋認為呢個二維碼出咗之後咧，係冇疫苗咧，嗰個護照咧就唔可以出去做買賣喎。
Especially they believe that without the RQ code or this vaccine passport, they are not allowed to go and buy and sell.
And 佢哋覺得咧，即係如果中咗疫苗嘅時候就係 服從咗即係敵基督，服從咗魔鬼，就係出賣咗神。
And they also believe that to accept this vaccine, that means that they have they are collaborating with the Antichrist and Satan, and is betraying God.
所以我頭先所講咧，佢哋呢一班人咧打死啲唔肯咧去接受呢個疫苗嘅。
And as I mentioned, that these people will not accept the vaccination.
但係事實到底呢個疫苗係唔係敵基督呢個獸嘅印記咧？
But truly, is this vaccination really the mark of the beast?
如果大家心水清，你會明白啦。根據頭先所解釋嘅，響頭3年半大災難嘅時候，有好多事要發生先。
But if you clearly understand that before the Great Tribulation, there are many in the first 3 years of the tribulation, many things need to happen, many natural disasters.
有好多天災橫禍會發生。
Natural disasters that must happen.
佢哋可能話：天災橫禍有啲有㗎啦，所以都你點知邊個係邊個唔係啊？
Well, they may say that we have natural disasters all the time, so how do you know which one is not?
但係原來聖經裏面所講大災難有啲咧，唔係只係天災橫禍啦，係呢個神嘅神蹟，例如水變為血啦，係未有試過啦？呢個星球撞地球係未有試過啦，同埋呢一個水變水變為血，對唔住，水變為苦。
But the Bible is very specific of the disaster that would happen is that the water turn into blood, as well a star that will crash to the earth.
仲有兩個見證人響叫天唔落雨，同埋行好多神蹟出嚟，然後最後被殺陳屍響呢耶路撒冷3日多嘅，係未有發生嘅。
And also, what had happened is the 2 witnesses who performed miracles and shut the heavens so there would be no rain, and they should have been killed, and their body was laid in Jerusalem for people to observe for 3 days.
更加重要就係呢個假先知咧，係同埋敵基督係要先出現咗先嘅。
Most important that the Antichrist and the false prophets must appear first.
甚至乎呢個假先知要為敵基督立呢個像出嚟，叫人敬拜。如果唔敬拜嘅時候咧，就會斬頭或者之類嘅。
And also, the false prophets set up the image of the Antichrist, and for people to worship, and those who do not worship will be killed.
呢啲一切嘅都未有發生到。
All this we mentioned had not yet happened.
所以咧，接受咗呢個疫苗唔係等於接受咗敵基督嘅印記。
Therefore, accepting this vaccination is not accepting the mark of the beast.
其實仲有一樣嘢就係咧，呢接受呢個疫苗印記嘅時候，其實係一個宗教嘅儀式嚟嘅。
Another thing is that to accept the mark of the beast is actually a religious ritual.
因為呢個假先知咧係設立呢敵基督係作呢個神咁樣嚟俾人供奉嘅。
And because the false prophet has set up this Antichrist as a god to be worshipped.
所以咧，你接受嘅印記咧就係入佢個教嘅，係一個宗教嘅儀式嚟嘅。
So when you accepted this mark, that you receive into their religion.
然後你會將敵基督當神嚟到拜嘅。
And you will worship the Antichrist as if it is God.
好明顯，今當接種呢個疫苗嘅時候，係根本係冇任何宗教或者入教嘅儀式。
And obviously, in this today, when we are vaccinated, you are not being received into any religion.
注射呢個疫苗係只係為咗救你條命，係防止呢個病毒嘅傳播。
And the purpose of the vaccination is to save lives and to prevent the virus from spreading.
呢個二維碼唔係阻止你任何交易。
And also, the QR code is not preventing you from doing business.
呢個政府准許你進入呢個超市，任何一個冇二維碼嘅人可以進入超市裏邊去買佢基本需要日用嘅嘢。
And the government allow anyone who do not have this passport to enter into supermarket to buy the essential that you need in life.
唔係好似呢個基督呢個獸嘅印記咧，係將你趕盡殺絕。如果你唔接受嘅時候咧，乜嘢都唔可以做到嘅。
Unlike the mark of the beast, that if you don't have it, then you can do nothing.
拒絕呢個獸嘅呢種疫苗嘅弟兄姊妹會指出佢話： 而家政府逼我哋種疫苗喎。
And those who are against the vaccination also said that, well, now the government is forcing us to receive this vaccination.
呢啲豈唔係極權者嘅所為？豈唔係敵基督嘅行為咩？
Isn't this the behavior of a totalitarian or Antichrist?
冇錯，敵基督係極權者，但係唔係等於每一個極權嘅都係敵基督。
It is true that the Antichrist is a totalitarian, but not every totalitarian is Antichrist.
如果呢個政府係敵基督嘅話咧，你老早就冇命啦。
And if the government is the Antichrist, then you already have lost your life.
因為你唔接受呢個印記嘅時候係會被處死嘅。
Because you would have been killed if you did not accept the mark of the beast.
今日你仲係生還嘅生存嘅緣故咧，係證明呢個政府就唔係敵基督。
The fact that you're alive today, it proves that the government is not Antichrist.
弟兄姊妹，我哋今日所見到呢咁嘅僵局。
That this impasse that we're experiencing today.
其實係一啲基督徒同埋一啲牧師咧，對神嘅話語一知半解。
It's because some of the believers and pastors have an incomplete comprehension of God's word.
冇錯，佢哋知道有敵基督，知道聖經裏邊講有獸嘅印記喺末世裏邊出現。
Yes, they knew that there would be an Antichrist, and also the mark of the beast will happen in the end times.
但係聖經裏面講好多其他嘅前奏曲。要發生喺未有獸印記之前要發生嘅嘢，佢係完全忽略咗嘅。
But a lot of the overture of the coming of the Antichrist and all those things must happen, they have neglected.
一個人知一啲，唔知一啲，半桶水咧係我好危險嘅。
And incomplete comprehension is something that's very dangerous.
最可惜嘅就係咧。任何一個爭論性嘅嘢如果加插咗宗教嘅觀念同埋政治裏邊嘅偏見嘅時候咧，係使到人咧係冥頑不靈咧，係無知同埋愚昧嘅。
Unfortunately, anything that's controversial, if you have inserted a religious perspective or a political bias, it make people become impervious to reason and be denied.
係好難嚟到去講得佢服，去解釋佢明嘅。
And very hard for you to persuade and make the person to understand.
其實佢今日只係見得到一啲少少嘅象徵啊，佢哋就覺得呢個係與所有嗰啲發生晒啦。
And today they saw a little bit of a hint, and they thought that all these things had happened.
就等於中國人所講啊，踩着咗烏鴉就當蛇，就自己嚇死自己啦。
The Chinese would say that you step on something and thought it was a snake, and you were scaring yourselves.
其實基督徒係需要咧係好小心去處理我哋所明白嘅道理。
As Christians, we need to be careful of the knowledge and our understanding.
一知半解係唔可以嘅。
And incomplete comprehension is not acceptable.
呢個就好似咧同22年之前咧。基督徒係製造咗一個同埋製造同埋散播咗呢個千禧危機啊 Y2K。
Okay, that's just like what happened 22 years ago that the Christians fabricated and spread the Y2K crisis.
搞到好大件事㗎喎，因為佢講到咧世界就會終結啦，主耶穌咧係會翻嚟啦。
Because at that time they said that the world will end and Jesus will return.
佢理由就係咁樣，因為當時咧有啲基督徒嘅推論咧，就有一個叫千年蟲啊，就係 Y2K bugs。
At that time, that some Christians had deduced that because of the Y2K bug.
就喺呢個60年代嘅時候咧，電子數碼化就係咧個電鐘啊數碼化咧係發明咗咧係。當時有個問題就係呢一個年份咧係2個數位，唔係4個數位。
That in the 1960s, when many things are being digitalized, that the year have only 2 digits instead of 4.
即係唔係話，譬如舉例子嗰時候就係60年代就係應該係1968，譬如1968、1990、1970或者1980、1990咁之類係，但係佢唔係話嗰陣時候咧，只係用咧68年、79年、81年。 之類嘅兩個數字。
The proper way of doing this was to have the 4 digits, which means 1970, 1968, or whatever. But at that time, all they was that was set up that they used only 2 digits. But the last 2 digits of the year, which is like 68, 70, or 71.
然後咧，其實喺當時有好多嘅數碼嘅內設嘅時鐘咧，已經係安裝好多電動嘅儀器啊、車啊、飛機啊之類嘅係電子數碼化咗啦。
And many of those internal clocks, digital internal clocks, has been built into different equipment like cars, airplanes, and things like that.
佢哋推論就係話咧，當1999年到最深尾，即係最用盡咗99嗰度，然後跟住進到咧11點59分，然後要跳進2000年嘅時候咧，呢個電子機就會失靈啦。
And they assume that when at the end of the 1999, when we step into 2000, all these equipment or vehicle that has this internal clock will malfunction.
因為佢唔知道點嚟到去操作。
Because they would not know how to operate.
佢99之後就冇得再跳上去啦。
And there's nothing to advance to after 99.
所以個推論就係咧，當一踏上2000年呢個時鐘踏上去嘅時候咧，好多嘅電子化嘅數碼化嘅儀器交通工具咧都會失靈。
And when we step into the year 2000, all the vehicles that we use for commuting will malfunction.
發電廠會失靈。
And the power generating facility will lose will malfunction. 甚至乎呢個導彈可能咧會突然間失咗控制，會發射咗或者爆炸咗。And even the guided missile may be uncontrollable. 所以話咧，時間當佢達到2000年嘅時候咧，會全世界咧會就進入一個大混亂嘅狀態，然後主耶穌嗰時候咧就會翻嚟接聖徒離開呢個地上高。And when this happened, the world will be in a great chaos, and Jesus will return at a time to receive the believers. 所以呢個全世界咧，其實咧都係響一個緊急嘅狀態喎。So at that time, the whole world was in a state of emergency. 好似雨淋大地，要屏息以待咧，睇下咧會唔會呢個大混亂會發生咧？ And everyone is holding their breath to wait if this the great mess or great confusion will come. 係咪好似基督徒所講啊？呢個主耶穌會喺嗰時候會翻嚟咧？Will be just like the Christians said that Jesus will return at that time. 但係感謝神，2000年咧。嚟咗，亦都去咗，完全冇任何事發生到。But thanks God that the year 2000 came and went, and nothing had happened. 原來咧基督徒咧可以到咁嘅地步嘅，係有一小部分嘅富有幻想力嘅基督徒咧，係令到其他所有嘅基督徒咧得到呢個臭名。And just a small portion of Christians who have a very vivid imagination causes the Christian to lose their reputation. 因為我哋好多時製造啲咁嘅謠言，製造啲咁嘅叫乜嘢陰謀論。And because we are often through our imagination, we spread a lot of conspiracy. 我哋知道啲，但係唔知道啲。And our understanding was incomplete. 我哋知道主耶穌會翻嚟，但係咧其他就唔嘅事實係唔需要理嘅。And we know that Jesus will return, but we ignore all the other facts. 總言之，揾得多一啲方便嘅理由，我哋就可以咧推出嚟我哋嗰個咁嘅講法。And we find some convenient event, and then we just bring out what our thoughts were. 等於中國人所講或者唔講呢個字，一陣先講啦。但係我哋久唔久有咁搞呢一啲咁嘅嘢出嚟嘅。And from time to time, we fabricate such things. 講多一樣嘢就係咧，我成長嘅時候嘅咧，就係其中另外一樣嘢就係呢一個英國嗰個時候咧，要加入呢個歐洲共同市場。That when during the time that I'm growing up, that England was to enter into the European common market. 即係等於而家歐盟啦。 which the European Union right now.
基督徒係製造一個緊張嘅情況，
And at that time, the Christians created a very tense situation.
因為當時歐洲共同市場咧有9個國家，
Because at that time, the Euro common market only had 9 nations.
所以有啲牧師就講啦，哇，睇住啦，當佢有10個國家嘅時候咧，敵基督嘅國家10個國咧係半鐵半泥咧係會發生。
And some pastors at the time thought that when the European market have 10 nations, then this is the half iron, half clay feet of the empire.
呢敵基督就會出現，呢敵基督國家咧就會成形啦。
And the nation of the Antichrist is formed.
呢啲牧師咁嘅解經方法係只不過一知半解。
And the explanation of these pastors really is incomplete.
佢知道呢敵基督國家有10個國家。
They knew that the empire of the Antichrist have 10 nations.
所以逢親見到有10個呢個咁嘅時候咧，就不理3、7、21咧，就硬指呢一個咧，肯定就係敵基督嘅國家啦。
So when any time that the number 10 arises, they will point to it that this is the nation of Antichrist, the empire of Antichrist.
呢個解法係錯嘅。
But obviously, this explanation or this interpretation is wrong.
因為呢個敵基督國家咧，10國聯盟咧，唔係只係響歐洲裏邊。
Because the 10 nation confederation of the Antichrist is not just restricted in Europe.
頭先我叫大家記住頭先所講嘅咧，就係咧敵基督嘅國家咧係應當呢一個巴比倫、馬代波斯、希臘同埋羅馬帝國嘅領域重疊嘅地方。
And as we have mentioned before, for you to remember, to keep in mind, is that the 10 nations must be within the border of the different empire, the 4 empires that we mentioned before.
因為啟示第13章裏邊講呢個敵基督嘅國咧係有呢4個不同嘅特徵喺裏邊嘅。
And God revealed in the book of Revelation chapter 13 that we read that the empire of the Antichrist, the nation of Antichrist, have these 4 characteristics.
呢一個歐洲共同市場係冇伊朗、冇伊拉克嗰度咧，嗰啲咧係或者敘利亞之處咧係唔可以係列為呢一個成為呢一個敵基督嘅王國。
Because the nation of the European Union do not consist of any of the Iraq or Iran or Syria, so they cannot be the nation of the empire of the Antichrist.
所以我哋讀聖經，我哋好小心。
And therefore, we need to read the Bible carefully.
唔好攞到個特徵之後咧，就係認為呢個有鬚就係我哋嘅老豆啦。
And that we would not take just one characteristic and think that, wow, this is it.
好啦，講翻呢個疫苗。
We turn to the vaccine.
係有出於同樣嘅問題。
That we have the same issue that arise here.
原來有咁多嘅事情啲未有發生到嘅，我哋點能夠推論呢？而家呢一個就係敵基督嘅獸嘅疫苗呢？
Since all the many things has not yet happened, how can we conclude that this vaccine is the mark of the beast?
因為冇敵基督出現啦，冇兩個見證人出現啦，冇假先知出現啦，冇立呢個像出現啦。
The Antichrist has not rise yet. There's no 2 witnesses or the false prophet or the image that we need to worship. People need to worship.
所以今日我做一個結論。
So today I want to conclude.
冠狀嘅疫苗根本唔係獸嘅印記。
The coronavirus vaccine is not the mark of the beast.
我哋可以放心嚟到接受注射。
That we can receive it with a peace of mind.
當我哋接受注射，唔係等於我哋去拜敵基督，亦都唔係服從佢。
When we accept this vaccination, does not mean that we are worshiping the Antichrist or collaborate with him.